Good morning, Paulson kids. How are we doing today on this fine Crypto Wednesday? Are you guys enjoying the pullback or what? It's the time the DCA if your bags aren't filled yet. But man, we have an exciting show for you today, guys, especially for our European Hexicans and Pulsicans, because guys, we're always talking about this wealth preservation strategy, right? How we're going to keep the money that we make from these mad crypto gains. Because, guys, the bull run's here. I don't know if you've seen the charts lately, but the bull run's here. The Bitcoin's at 97,000. It's freaking insane. And so we got to make sure we're locking in those gains the right way, making sure that we're taking profits, preserving that wealth. And you guys are here right now watching the DeFi Crypto Alliance show, where what we're doing is using crypto as that wealth creation tool and using business, real world assets as a wealth preservation tool. And for today, guys, I have a special guest who's going to be running the interview of the European business opportunities. And this is my guest right here. You guys know him already. It's Mr. Dane. What is up, bro, man? How are you feeling today?
Oh man, we're getting a pump today, which is great. I have never had so many people on social media since we've been doing this for the last few years reaching out. All the normies are getting excited. It is an incredible time to be here in crypto. We're pulling back out of this dip, which is great. And I'm pumped, man. So feeling great. You and I have talked a lot about different strategies, different ways that we can give back to the community, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that is a common theme over and over again is a lot of the guys have talked about wanting to have their own business, wanting to either start one or figure out a way to be able to make money after the crypto bull run, likely using a lot of their gains they make from this bull run. And so one of our really good friends that we have in Europe, he does one better. Rather than starting a business from scratch, which I don't know if you guys are aware of this statistic, but I think it's like 90 to 95% of new businesses fail within the first 5 years. I think is how that statistic goes.
In the U.S.
Rather than, it's brutal. Rather than starting a new business, though, what if you could do something better? What if you could go find one that had made it past that curse period, if you will? What if you found one that already had systems and processes in place, had a model that was proven, that had worked for years, had employees, had management, and you could step into something that was already working well and have income from the jump? That's an incredible opportunity. One of the biggest opportunities out there outside of crypto, in my opinion. And so today we wanted to bring on our good friend Clive, who is doing just that in Europe. And so we'll do some Q&A. We'll do some quick fire stuff today and kind of talk through how all that works. How are you today, Clive?
Hey, well, first of all, guys, it's great to be here, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come on and talk about this. And it's, as you know, it's a passion of mine. And yeah, very well, and looking forward to jumping straight in. And you're so right about those statistics as well. It's the same in the UK as it is in the States, 90%. And it's one of those weird things that I did a talk once on the subject, and over a 10-year period, if you work out the statistics, you got more chance of winning on a roulette wheel than you have of actually surviving 10 years. So that gives you some ideas on the stats.
It's bananas. In fact, one of the things this was interesting. I was sitting down on social media last night, thumbing through, I was scrolling through, and one of my real estate investor buddies, he posted, he said that one of the biggest real estate influencers, now this is a little bit, I'll bring it in, it'll relate, but one of the biggest real estate influencers in his local market came to him because from at least his real estate business is really struggling. He's crushing it on social media, pretending like he's doing incredibly well. But he comes to my buddy and says, hey, business actually isn't that good. What should I do? And my friend was just commenting how most things out there, especially on social media, are not as they appear. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors. And man, particularly, I think in the business sector, there's a lot of people that will claim that there's great things that they're doing and they're just smashing it. And so today I'd like to really cut through a lot of the misnomers, a lot of the bad information. We'll get to what's actually working right now, what trends you're seeing, and what you would do if you were to go back to a younger version of yourself, how you would approach businesses and business buying and selling with what you're seeing right now. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect. And yeah, just to talk that point, one thing obviously I have, for those that are watching and don't know too much about me, I set up my first business 26 years ago, taken 3 from startup to profit to exit, and then acquired my first business in 2013 and turned it around. And it's I've been on that M&A sort of route ever since, because it's definitely the way to go. And I'm going to explain a little bit about why now is a good time as well.
Yeah, let's do it. So go ahead and let's start. And you guys in the chat, I see a bunch of your comments. It's great to be back, guys. I'm glad to see each of you. This is great. Not dead, just working in the background. I probably need to be a little bit more public. But yeah, it's great to be here today. And I'd like to, as we're going through, I mean, like normal, you guys just rapid fire questions in the chat as we go through this. Love to see your guys' insights. But Clive, go ahead and give more of a background. What did you do before you were buying and selling businesses? How did you end up there, and why do you think it's such a good opportunity now?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. So first and foremost, to say, I alluded to it. So I've 26 years ago set up a financial services business. I mean, that's my background. And ultimately, it was a hard slog, right? It was getting to that point of sustainability, and then to profitability, and then to getting people that were interested in when what came to exit. And the situation is that right here, right now, well, first of all, going through to acquisitions and fast tracking sort of 13 years up to the point where I got my first opportunity. That was a business that was failing.
How did you find that opportunity?
Well, actually, the reason I found it was because a good employee of mine, a sales manager, she basically jumped into a great opportunity, but it wasn't the opportunity she thought it was, and the business started to fail. And ultimately, well, it was failing already when she jumped into it, and she got straight back onto me and said, "Do you know somebody who might buy this business?" It was in a sector I'd never ever worked in before. It was education, it was procurement, and I just said, right, okay. I went and had a conversation with that seller, and it came to the point where I saw straight through. I understood where the actual problems were. I offered him an amount of money to just buy the stock. I didn't actually buy the company. I bought the stock out of the company, and we turned it around in 3.5 months, and moved that on 18 months later for a 20 times profit.
Ooh, a 20x.
A 20x profit. So
those are crypto gains, yeah.
As you can imagine, I suddenly thought, why have I been slogging my guts out trying to work 7 days a week to go and build this business and these businesses, because I was into my my third one at that time, when I could actually go and essentially buy a business that, as you say, with 10 years down the line, they've already got their sales worked out, they got their products worked out, they got their processes worked out, they're making profit, etc., etc. And some of these are businesses that, when you look at them and you get involved, you think to yourself, if you know what you're doing, you can actually turn it up and quite accelerate the growth as well, which is something else. And there's another opportunity that probably doesn't get talked about too much, which is the opportunity of arbitrage. So you may or may not be aware, for those of you in the audience that actually are involved with businesses, that businesses work on a multiple basis, and there's different ways of working. The most common is EBITDA, and which pairs the business back to the true profitability. If you buy a business, we'll give you an example. We'll say a $2 to $3 million business that you give a 3x multiple for it, hypothetically. That's the multiple at that level, and you buy 5 of these and you bolt them all together. If you do nothing more than just get these integrated, you've then got a $10 million dollar business, and ultimately you could sell that for 6 to 8, even 10 times more. So just by bolting them together, you've got that arbitrage, that profitability from that. And that's not allowing for the fact that you'd actually probably take those businesses, and obviously the aim is to grow them. You'll have economies of scale, have cross-selling opportunities, all those sort of great things that you can actually do to actually grow it and grow the opportunity. But ultimately, yeah, the multiples can be quite significant at times.
That is bananas. And you guys, I mean, you guys watching our show, right? You're not here to freaking be in stocks and bonds, right? Nobody here is interested in incredibly average returns. We're looking for outsized gains. That's why everybody here is investing in crypto, right? And Corey and I are particularly interested in outsized gains, continuing that path forward after the crypto bull run. That's one of the things that I love so much about buying and selling businesses. I don't know if you guys caught that, but Clive said that he's flipped businesses, got a 20x on his money on that deal, which is absolutely insane. So let's do this, Clive. I'd like to give the people watching the show, we could take the show in a ton of different ways today, but what I'd like to do next is really kind of walk them through an example of how this works, kind of give a fundamental idea so that people can wrap their head around buying and selling businesses on a very oversimplified level. And then we'll kind of see what direction we go from there. How's that sound?
Absolutely fine. And I can also talk a little bit about why the opportunity right now is quite a good one a bit later on, maybe when doing that. But that works for me. So
yeah, in fact, we'll wrap with that. I think that'll be great. We'll dive into kind of like an example here, and then we'll kind of wrap with why now is such a good time. And I'll add some insights there as well. I think outside of crypto, business buying and selling is the biggest opportunity there is, period. I really don't think that there's anything that compares to the two opportunities. In fact, Corey and I have talked, if we weren't doing crypto right now, I'd be 100%. Flipping companies with you. It wouldn't even be close. Because the upside's so enormous. So, okay. So you gave an example of like a $2 to $3 million business. I think a lot of people here in the chat are likely to end up, with a few $1,000,000 from this bull run. So if you can talk us through an example, whether it be one of your own or one of your students buying a business within that like realm, let's start with what does that look like? What does a good business look like to go and purchase?
Well, first and foremost, you've got a lot of people that talk about business buying, and there are those that go at the end of the scale where the business is in distress. Certainly, you should never, if you've never owned a business, then that is definitely an area you just do not want to go into. Distressed businesses can be useful when you're buying them, maybe the assets out of the business and putting it into a business that's already established, what we call a platform business. That's an opportunity in its own right there, and that can obviously give you an awful lot of gains, because maybe you're purchasing out of it the client base, for example, and you can leverage it through your own business. But let's just talk about business acquisition from a standing position. Well, first and foremost,
and let's talk and let me give some more context here too. Yeah, let's talk through someone's approaching their first business. I'm glad you gave that context of like, hey, if this is your first rodeo, probably don't go buy something that's super distressed that you've got to breathe life back into.
Exactly that. So that's the first thing. But the way to do this is to, first of all, you need to go and kiss an awful lot of frogs when we go out looking for businesses. We typically employ a deal origination process. And how might you do that? Well, you guys are great in terms of your social reach, and so therefore social reach is one way of doing it. There's LinkedIn, of course, depending on the sector of the business you're going through. If it's an old engineering manufacturing, believe it or not, the old-fashioned letter and just writing a letter or getting a letter written for you, or having the envelope handwritten, will go a long way to getting those letters opened. So we do the whole gambit of these different things, and depending on which sector you're into, it depends very much as to maybe how you should approach those things. So, for example, if you were going for an e-com business, which an awful lot of people are right now, those multiples are quite high. You've got a situation where you'd probably go through a social channel, right? You'd go through various Instagram, you might go through messaging, you might go through TikTok or things of this nature. So there's different approaches for different types of businesses, and depending on what sector that is depending on the approach that you might adopt in order to do that. But you have to have a deal origination process, and that's something, because the alternative to that is you go to a broker, and business brokers are fairly, I think everybody knows there's online business brokers, and there's also those that operate on a client basis, building their client base, the likes of, the benchmarks.
Kind of like a real estate broker, right? Like if I want to go buy a house, I could hire somebody to go find me something that I was looking for, right?
Yeah, and typically what's going to happen, I'll tell you now, of those businesses that are actually listed, you're going to get sub 20% that are actually sold, period. And then you're going to get a situation where the majority of those that are sold through those are trade buyers or PE companies, perhaps private equity companies. For people like ourselves that are, private investors, the businesses don't appeal. And the reason they don't appeal is because the multiples that they are asking, the price they're asking, is far too high. So typically broker deals are not a good value option. If you're going for a value in terms of acquisition, you do not want to be going to brokers. From that point of view, if you're a listed company and you're listing and your profits are 12x, then you don't mind paying 5-6x for a business. But when you're buying a private investor, you do not want to be in that game at the levels that we're probably talking about.
Okay,
so
that's great. Yeah, and in fact, I'd say it's really similar. It's a similar concept in all the markets. Like you need to buy a deal. At the end of the day, if you can get a good deal, a lot of the rest of the deal will almost kind of work itself out as long as you bought the thing right. And we've seen the same thing with real estate. When Corey and I were buying real estate, you could go hire an agent and you could look on the MLS online, but that's not typically where the best deals were. The best deals were when, somebody reached out from social media and said, hey, my grandma or grandpa passed away. We need to sell the house. Well, now we've got something, right? Now we've got something. They've got a need, and the world doesn't know about the deal. And it can be good for everybody because that person in that instance is more interested maybe in privacy and maybe speed. And they're not trying to necessarily get top dollar. And then we could step in and say, hey, let's just make this easy on you. And it sounds like potentially finding a business is similar conceptually.
Well, we can relate it to crypto terms too, real quick. Like, when is it time to buy crypto? In the bear market, when people are in pain and they're dumping their crypto, like you're buying other people's pain and other people's problems. And that's why you're getting a discount on your crypto guys in the middle of a bear. But most people want to come and buy in the top of the bull when everyone's euphoric and everyone's feeling good. And that's when you're buying, you're not buying anything in value. Business and real estate works exactly the same way, down to the T. You want to buy when things are cheap and discount, when people are having problems, life problems, and you go and sell those same things when people are doing great. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
It's exactly that. And the reality is why do people sell their business? The retirement, illness, and sometimes, the business has just got too big for them. They've got to the point where they've taken it so far and they don't want to take it any further, or they want to cash out and they want to gain some of the finance they've actually got. But there's a reason quite often people get to a point and they just want to exit that business. And that's the opportunity that you get to step in. If you've got somebody that is basically sitting there, doesn't really want to sell their business, and you do get that when you reach out and you make approaches, you're going to get people that quite frankly want you to, as we say, quote you happy, and on the basis that you want to give them they want a big number from you. And those are the businesses that you don't really want to be looking for, because they're the ones that aren't going to give you the right level of returns when once you've acquired it.
That's good. Okay, so that was excellent, Clive. What type of businesses do you find a newer person looking to purchase a business? What should that business look like, right? Can you give us some criteria? How long have they been around? How many employees do they have? What industries do you like right now? Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing I always say is stay in your lane. So, and that might sound a little bit odd, but what I'm saying there is there are some of us, and I've worked in 5 different sectors, and take multiple businesses into different sectors to the next level. But unless you've got the broad and very solid business ability to do that, an example of somebody that might would be somebody who's in marketing, that's very good at marketing, because every business needs marketing, right? Then basically you should stay in your lane. So stay in what you know. If it's not what you know from a work perspective, what's your passion? What you have because when people have a passion for something, they know an awful lot about the subject. So those are things that I would always recommend. Anybody that's starting out, you should definitely stay in your lane. In terms of what you might get involved in right now, I'll tell you where there's an awful lot of opportunity right now. Engineering manufacturing, whether you're in the UK, the US, Australia, or any major market, you are talking engineering manufacturing. There's an awful lot of those businesses around as it stands right now. An awful lot are exiting because it tends to be the older generation that obviously have got those businesses, and therefore they're going out. And because there's an awful lot of supply there at the right level, and I need to probably give some clarity about what I mean by the right level. If you're looking above sort of 50 million business, if a business is at 50 million plus, the PE firms and all the trade buyers, they're all in there. And ultimately, there's more buyers than there are sellers. The levels we're talking about, the absolute flip is the opposite. The opposite is true, right? There's an awful lot more sellers than there are buyers, and that gives you the opportunity, one, for choice, but also number two, it means that obviously that, as you guys know, drives the price down as well. So in terms of the sort of sectors, I'm seeing an awful lot of activity. Tech is always an awful lot of activity, but certain tech again can be quite high in terms of multiple, but there's still very much deals to be done. So if I tell you, give you an example for one guy that's within Acquisition Masters here in the UK. He was looking to roll up in the UK, but actually is buying 3 businesses right now on the other side of the pond, because ultimately the opportunities are right there, and they're good value opportunities. So he's finding better value on your side of the pond, if I'm honest.
How interesting. Okay, very cool.
And
are there other criteria that you look for, like age of a
100%.
business or things of that nature?
100%. So what you want to be doing in terms of age of the business, personally, I will never look at any business that's not been in business for 5 years. Why? Because they've gone through the pain points, and they should be sustainable. And what do I mean by sustainable? I mean that they're making profit every single year on year. And I always look back, and again, there are different approaches you can do as you get more experience. But I would certainly say, if you are new to business, if it's your first business you're buying, and I realize that some of your viewers won't be that, they'll be probably somebody who already owns a business and might want to build that and grow that even further, and there's opportunities there I can talk to. But if you're starting out for the very first time, you're going to want to look at the last 3 years, and if you are getting consistent growth for the last 3 years, then that's a trend that you should be looking to do. If you're an experienced business owner, again, we always look after over the last 3 years, and we're looking for, we're obviously ensuring that there's no downward trend. If there is, we need to understand why that is. If it's an opportunity that you know about because it's in your lane, it's a sector you know, and you know how to turn that around, and that can happen, then that's great. But if that's not the case, then what you want to do is avoid those sort of trends. But so typically, I'm looking for a solid, consistent trend. Nobody that's going up, down, big banner year, as we call it, which is a big spike. And then, with a view to, if the last year, because this quite often will happen, you'll get people trying to sell their business when they've had a fantastic year, knowing full well it's going to come crashing back down probably the next year, because there's a reason as to why it's happened. Those are things that are, to look out for. And there's ways you can mitigate against that. If they tell you that is going to continue as a trend, then what you want to be doing is loading your deal with an awful lot of what we call an earn-out. And an earn-out is where basically you pay them out on future performance of that business.
I have a friend that sold a trucking company, and part of their deal, I think it was half the deal, was based upon an earn-out, and he sold the top almost perfectly on his trucking company. But then half of the money is stuck in the business. He told me more recently, he was like, Dane, I would just freaking let him have the other half so I could get the heck out of here. And I think it's important to understand, the deal structure and how you're building that out. So that's really important. Okay. What about Corey and I have built a number of companies, and man, hiring and staffing a company, building the culture, that's one of the hardest things when it comes to a business. Is there a minimum amount of employees that you look for? I mean, I think most people are hoping not to step into a job when they buy a business, but to buy something that's truly like running, and they can step in and try to optimize and do some different things to grow it.
Well, that's a great question, Dane, and you're absolutely right. If you're buying a business that's of, we'll say, sub 8 employees, you're probably buying a job, right? You're probably buying the day-to-day management of, and really what, and this goes back to, again, the value of the deal. If you're going to be buying a business, you really want somebody that's a business that's got a general manager in there. And that's somebody that basically runs the day-to-day. And the way I test this always is to say to the existing seller, so let's assume for a second, heaven forbid, you go on a vacation and something happens and you're wiped out for, you've had a road accident or whatever, and you're wiped out for 3, 4, 5 months. What happens to the business then? Who manages that business in your absence? And if they start to stutter a little bit uneasy, shifting their chair a little bit, you can bet your bottom dollar that what the real situation is that they probably need to be in that business. And that's you buying a job, basically, unless you can get somebody else that that can step into that role to do so. Now, what I will say there can also play to your advantage. So if, for example, you have an existing business and you're rolling it in and you've got the infrastructure, that's okay. It's not so much of a problem. But also, you'll be able, if they've not got somebody in there, but somebody that can come in and actually work within that role and do that for you, then it's a great opportunity to actually drive the price down a little bit.
I like that. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see newer entrepreneurs taking on new opportunities, they're stepping into roles and doing things where they're really building themselves a high-paying prison where they can't truly step away. In fact, my wife and I have been talking more recently. She ran our dog breeding operation that we used to have,
Yep.
and she liked a lot of that she liked a lot of things about that. And she's trying to figure out her next step, the next thing that she wants to build and create. And I said, why is it that you want to create this thing? And she said, well, it's because I want to make more money that I feel like I'm in control of spending solely. And I said, okay, well, why do you want to have the money to go and spend, right? And she's like, well, because I want to do these different things. I'm like, okay, so you're really wanting the freedom and the opportunities and the experiences that money can give you, but you're not going to have those if you're stuck in the day-to-day of this thing that you're building and you can't get away from it. And that's critical to be able to have a plan and build things in such a way so that you can actually have the freedom. You can really you can have your cake and eat it too if you can make the money and have time freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the irony, right? Because so many people actually start a business on the basis they're going to earn enough money to be able to do what they want to do and have the time to be able to do it. And the actual reality is, and you've also mentioned that right now, what they actually build is they start generating some money. They start generating some, they spend a lot more time than they anticipate within the business. And you have this prison where in actual fact they can't escape. So, I mean, if I tell you now that I've got 7 business entities that I obviously have control over, and I don't work in any of them. I work on them, I don't work in them. And I couldn't possibly be able to do all that I do or have the variance that I have, even with equity in businesses on your side of the pond, if I basically worked in those businesses, because I'll be drawn into all of those, and it gives me the opportunity to go and do and have the freedom to be able to go and shift around and do what I want to do as well. So absolutely critical point.
I like that. Now, we understand you're not a tax advisor and you're not going to give us any financial advice. So that being the case, what tax strategies do you see people let's say, considering when it comes to buying and selling businesses? So, for instance, a bunch of our guys that we know in our community, they're going to be able to make a bunch of money in crypto, and they're going to need to be able to walk into things where they can take that money that they've made and ideally depreciate it, right, for tax purposes, so they don't get murdered and have to give a bunch of it back to the government. Are there opportunities when it comes to acquiring businesses that can help with that can help mitigate taxes on earned income?
Well, you're absolutely right. I'm not a tax advisor. Never put myself out to be so. But I mean, there are many different structures. I mean, there's trust structures and things of this nature. Personally, I have somebody that is a go-to for me in terms of you guys over there, and I would certainly introduce you guys to. That is an actual tax strategist and will take an individual set of circumstances and apply his process for doing so. And if it's at the right level, and he typically won't deal with anything that's sort of $5 million or less, but if it's $5 million or more, then he will get involved and he'll just charge you 20%, and the rest of it is yours. So there's people that certainly I can plug you into in order to assist you with that process. I certainly am not going to offer myself up in terms of a chat strategy.
Sure. Yeah, you would just find the right professional to help with that, essentially, is what you're.
Yeah, exactly that. And this is the thing, right? You can't cut the corners in terms of the right professional. So I always, from a legal perspective, from a tax perspective, I will always divert to my own legal professionals, and they're worth their weight in gold, really, in terms of what you get from that. And obviously, it's got everything you do should be performance related. Okay, so I mean, one thing I would say there is if they're not prepared to work on the basis of what they deliver for you in terms of tax savings, then you shouldn't be dealing with that person.
I like that. That's a good tip. Okay, cool. Well, let's kind of wrap out the business section here with why is now a great time to be looking at acquiring businesses?
Okay, so if you consider business owners, and we're talking about through the generations, and you've got the silent generation, these children that sort of grew up through the war years and everything else, and they've basically got this situation of
the baby boomers, right?
That's the silent generation. Then we had the baby boomers, and then things came a bit more affluent, so they started to set up a load of businesses. The world had been a different place post-war. And those guys now, we're about halfway through the baby boomer generation exiting an awful lot of legacy businesses. And these are businesses, essentially, when I call them legacy businesses, we're talking about what do people want? And I think one of you alluded to it, might have been Corey, that said about the fact that it's not always about the money. For some of these, they've been building these businesses for 30 odd years, and what they want to do, they want to hand over to a safe pair of hands, right? And this is the situation. So by sheer age, by the fact that illness strikes within this period, it may not just strike them, it may strike their spouse or whatever. They've got a situation whereby, for example, in the UK over here, we're expecting 612, well, we know that 612,000 businesses are owned by baby boomers in the UK alone. They got to transition out, okay? The same thing in the States. I tell you now, the numbers are meteoric. They're significantly more. Many, many millions of businesses over the next decade are going to be transitioned out. It is basically, we're in the middle of what is a very big sweet spot, a golden opportunity, a gold rush for those things, for business acquisition. And if I tell you now that this is something else that's quite important to understand and proves and underlines this point. If we look at the amount of people that exit or close down their businesses, not for any reason of difficulty, purely and simply because they had to just shut the doors, they had no succession plan, they had, nobody to pass the business on to. Go back 12 years, and it was a quarter of what it is today. That 4 times as many people are just closing the doors because they have no succession plan in place. This is the opportunity that exists and will continue to exist over the next 10 years. It is a gold rush indeed.
It's the same here in the U.S. I know for a fact because our friends, Dane, we've talked to a lot of these guys here. We've even done events at BizOp events, and they're seeing the exact same thing here in the U.S.
Exactly that. It definitely is. And I actually do an awful lot with, so my network in the US, I'm in a network of about 600-700 M&A professionals. And let me tell you now, in fact, that's where Dane and I met, where we met at an event, I think it was back in Florida in January, wasn't it? Where that was the case. And so we move in the same circles there. And yeah, absolutely. On the money there, Corey. It really is a huge opportunity right there.
Well, it was really eye-opening. My dad owns a landscape architecture firm, and he's been looking to exit that thing for the last few years. And man, it was really eye-opening to see him go through this process of trying to find a buyer and figure out financing and do these different things. And it really brought what you're saying to the forefront of my mind, where there's so much opportunity. And for a lot of these people that have done well, oftentimes if you can walk in and make it easy, that was the big things. My dad was pulling his freaking hair out over how to put all this together. If you could have walked up to my dad, given him a reasonable price and made it freaking easy on him, he would have done the deal in 2 seconds and sailed off into the sunset. And there's so many people out there that are in that same boat, because their other option is they're going to, like you said, Clive, they're going to close the doors and walk away and get nothing from this thing they've spent, probably the majority of their earning years building and nurturing, and it's a part of them now. And so it's I'm with you. One of the biggest opportunities. We're really excited. Corey and I have talked about a few different businesses that we can buy to really like snap into what we're already doing to take us up a few levels, and excited to get your help as we move into that part of our journey here after this crypto bull run. Absolutely.
Well, I'm with you guys, and looking forward to the journey, and keeping in touch and giving you some real time sort of updates on what I'm seeing in the market and how things are progressing. We all know that next year is a critical time for in terms of what you guys are involved in crypto. I'm involved in it, as you know, myself. So ultimately,
Clive's a fellow crypto bro. We're rowing together here. It's exciting.
I'm looking forward to my gains as well, and being able to utilize those funds, and after we get out and invest them in something else until next time.
Excellent. Well, that'll be great. Well, we appreciate you being on today, Clive. We're gonna do what's the best way for people to get a hold of you or find you?
Yeah, well, you can already see in the top here, which is Acquisition Masters, which is, but I'm on LinkedIn. It's the name is Clive Marget. So I'm sure you guys will be posting something on the chat. So I'm happy to share my LinkedIn profile around. But you'll find me on LinkedIn. It's Clive Marget. There's not too many of us, I don't think, around. And if you reach out to Acquisition Masters, we've got a website as well, .co.uk. Then by all means, there you go. That's great, and I see a few from Denmark as well. So it's good to see Europe so well represented on this course.
Yeah, very cool. This is great. Okay, cool, Clive. Well, we're gonna stick around and chat more crypto, but otherwise, we appreciate you being here today, brother. Have a great day.
Fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity, guys, and look forward to catching up very soon.
Sounds good. See you, Clive.
See you, Clive.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cool. So I'm telling you guys, so much opportunity in the market. We've talked about this time and time again. You've got to have a freaking plan. In fact, one of the chats, I was another day, Corey, one of the crypto chats, we were talking about some of the tokens that had popped off that, and I had a few questions about some of them. And the feedback from Hans, he was like, well, what was your plan going in?
Right.
And it kind of essentially pulled my pants down, and I was naked, and I was like, oh, I actually didn't have like that specific of a plan with this entry. And it made me think about how I need to reconsider how my approach is and make sure to have a plan. I've got a very clear plan. Corey does as well, for what happens after the bull run. And I'm telling you guys, you need a plan as well to be able to make sure you don't give away half or a quarter or so of your crypto gains to the government. So I think somebody like Clive is a great opportunity, especially for our friends in Europe.
Exactly. Because we've had Chris on the show a couple times now, and our guys know who Chris is, and they love him. Chris always brings a nice, relief in, a nice optimistic relief in the future from paying 3-letter agencies, which no one here likes to do. And so, and it's funny because when Chris was on, I've had multiple times in the chat, the guys out there in the UK, in Europe, go, hey, do you guys know anybody like Chris out here? So we're still working on that, guys. And I think we're going to find one for you, but for your wealth preservation in between, or at the end of like what a Chris does, like Clive is perfect. Clive is perfect to go and park some crypto funds, get into a business, one that's operating, paying some cash flow, one that is more passive for you and your family, and lock in some of that legacy wealth, which is very important because, guys, the wealth creation part is easy. But remember, we talk about it all the time on this show. You got to become a millionaire here and a millionaire here before you can become a millionaire here. This is why we see time and time again, all the sports athletes, all the actors, everybody, they get rich and they lose it quick, right? And it's because they didn't do the work and they didn't do the planning like Dane just talked about. And so you want to think these things through down to how you can pay less taxes or defer those taxes, and what are you going to assets are you going to go into? Because look, guys, it's not T-shares. Come on, we've had this conversation thousands and thousands of times. All right, I love T-shares. Don't get me wrong, but that's not where you're going to park there in the bear market. Like, you guys need to go out and preserve that wealth and think about legacy wealth for your family. Remember about the talk about being the one for your family, of breaking those chains of mediocrity and that curse, that 9 to 5, relying on the 401ks. 401ks are effing garbage. We all know that. I'm not waiting until I'm 80 to have fun. It's just not going to happen. And so you guys need a plan in place. This is part of it. And so, yeah, I'm glad we had Clive on. It's a little bit of for our UK and Europe guys. Hit them up, guys. Follow them over on LinkedIn. Acquisition Masters, which is really cool. And start thinking about some of these things. And hopefully we can find you guys also a Chris out there. We're working on it right now. At least something similar. It don't have to be perfect like how Chris does, but something that we can refer you guys, because we want all you guys to not only create wealth, but preserve that wealth.
Absolutely. Otherwise, in current markets, man, feeling great about cryptocurrency. This is the most excited I've been about crypto in a long time, man.
Guys, Dane's on the show. This might be a top.
If you guys go sell all your stuff, this has got to be a local top.
Maybe I gotta sell. He's a forex. This is
it's beautiful, man, and price charts are looking solid. We've got a lot of really nice structure here. It's interesting to see. So here's one of the things I've noticed. In fact, I bet you guys, if you guys have noticed this as well, I'd love put XRP in the chat if you've noticed this as well. If you've had somebody reach out to you because of the XRP pump recently, put XRP in the chat. I'm really curious.
That's everybody.
It's got to be, right?
The ones who aren't even gonna type it. It's happened, right? It's such an easy for me sell to go, okay, look, you're buying on top of a green candle that's a I think XRP is like a $70 billion. I'm like, look, even if XRP goes to $100 billion market cap, like, do you think it's going to surpass the value of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin's $1 trillion? What's your realistic expectations on this market cap and where it's going? Like, you can't. Like, guys, what do you want, a 10x? You might 10x, 5x, I don't know. But like, look at Hex, man. I mean, Hex, man, it's been just the man, it's been doing great. Like last night, man, I'm trying to go to bed and freaking Hex keeps on ripping. I'm like, stop. I want to go to sleep. Like, Hex is just putting it in, man, and it's got a lot of room still. All these assets, in my opinion, do. They still have a lot of room, right? And it's easy, guys, right now to be able to convert these guys over.
Oh yeah, opportunity for onboarding has never been more plentiful, and you could get family and friends in, and they could still make money. The last thing you want to do is freaking bring people in at the end of next year, and then you got to go to freaking Thanksgiving and Christmas
get them wrecked
after you brought them into the top.
Yeah, right. Right now is when you guys be screaming at the top of your lungs with your megaphone. I mean, I've said this multiple times. By the way, Dane, this is the loudest megaphone right here, the loudest in Pulse Chain right here. I'm the loudest megaphone in Pulse Chain. screaming because we've onboarded 250 like 5 members out of the real estate community. Guys, we're not talking about chump change here. It's not been chump change. And so it's been just the most fun journey to bring these entrepreneurs, these real estate guys into this space and give them some exposure. And look at, these candles today, man, is the reward that we get. It's just freaking amazing. So you guys should be doing the same. You guys need to do the same. Hey, it's Christmas. How many dinners are you going to be attending in December? How many parties? Like, I know there's parties going on. I don't party, but I know all you guys do. And you're going to these parties and you're hanging out with your friends and you're talking about making money, because that's what you should be talking about, guys. Not about like who won the football game. Come on, talk about making money, and then you can pull up your phone, and it's easy now to at least point to some green candles and be like, look, like, do you want some of this, or do you want to stay broke working your 9 to 5?
Yep. Seriously. And we'll make it easier on you. All you've got to do is that. And then if you don't want to deal with the freaking onboarding, connect them with us. Connect them with us. We'll freaking do it all. No problem.
Getting on board, man. Shit.
Easy money for everybody.
Yeah, right now is the time, guys. Look, we're still closer to the bottom than we are to the top. I'm gonna tell you right now. I can't say that for Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin probably still has some room to run. It probably does, but I wouldn't want to buy $100,000 Bitcoin. Like, what am I gonna get? A double? No, thank you.
Double, triple. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Ethereum, I might get a 5x. Okay, that's better. Okay, XRP, maybe I get a 8x. Come on, guys. Come on. It's just too easy. Just too easy, man. Oh, jeez, it's so good.
Thank God we're here now. We're past the bear market and onward and upward. I'm hopeful. It's exciting, man. You probably talked on the show earlier about how the super trend flipped green, and theoretically we should have 100 days of fun, right? You already talked about that. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Oh, for sure. This is it. Mid-March,
How
man.
can you not be excited? This is freaking great.
This is going to be amazing. I mean, we're still waiting for some rocket thrusters to fire off, but I think they will be firing off right on cue as we're going through altcoin season here. Because
here's a quick question for you, Corey. I think this is a fascinating discussion. If you're Richard, and we've already talked about the rocket thrusters, do you do those during this part of the altcoin season, or do you wait?
Well, he has no control over some of them, right? Like,
sure.
So 2 of them are fired off now. Trump being in office, which he had no control over, and that's a done deal, man. Let's go. Like, come on, bro. Like, that's freaking just go time. Number 2, the ETH BTC ratio flipping green and basically going up, because now couple that with ETH ETFs, that's rocket thruster number 3. Rocket thrust number 2. Number 3 is SEC clarity. So, like, he doesn't have control of that. I think we'll see that around Christmas, maybe a little after Christmas. Him streaming, now he has control over that. So maybe that happens at a certain time on the altcoin season, very strategically planned after the clarity happens. So yes, to your point there, that could be the case. Also, number 5 is also the privacy pools, which we know they're working on. They've been testing, and we would be first to party with something. And maybe that is strategically being planned too. Hard to say.
You can add one more and say the SAC funds. Do we see some of that come over the bridge here?
Well, I add that into the ETH rocket. That's the ETH rocket.
Yeah. You said that. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah, and everyone gets it wrong, man. Everyone thinks it's 170K ETH. It's not, man. It's 317,000 Ethereum that's waiting to buy our stuff. There's 2 wallets that love to buy our stuff with 317,000 Ethereum that mainly only buys our stuff at right times. Now, who controls the keys of those wallets? I don't know, and I don't care. I just know what their habits are and what they do. And that is rocket thruster number 2, man. And we're getting close to that because now ETH BTC
is the time. That's what I'm saying. Is the time for that during this theoretical next 100 days of altcoin season, or do you wait?
It could be, man. It could be. I don't know. That would be a very interesting. Yeah. I think, man, here's my personal opinion. I think him streaming is more bullish than 317,000 Ethereum. I know that sounds wild.
Interesting.
But to me, I think the way the market would respond and the way like some maybe old whales who have been like exited for a long time seeing the leader back, beating the drum, beating the SEC. I think, man, him streaming again after clarity's put in place would send us higher than 317,000 Ethereum. I do. I really do.
317,000 Ethereum would send us.
It sends us pretty high too. Yeah, I mean,
I know what you're saying, though. I'm with you. I think it'd be big.
It'd be massive, dude. So
Fairweather Dane is back.
Yeah.
Fairly stated, sir.
It's
fairly
the top,
stated.
Riz. It's the top. This is the
Go
time to
sell all your
sell.
bags quick.
He's a fork, man. He's a fork. Maybe we can convince him to come on Open Mic Friday this Friday. That'd be fun. And then Briz can come
I
on.
need to make more regular appearances. This is fun. It's good to see you guys. Well, I've got to jump over to
I do too.
Call starting right now.
All right, guys. I'll see you, Dane. I'll wind her off, and maybe we'll see you Friday.
All right. See you guys.
Peace. So, guys, I'm hopping off too. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully, we can start bringing these more opportunities to you as we're moving through the bull, because we want to be able to preserve our wealth once we're done with this wealth creation. It's very important, guys. We'll be doing a lot more opportunity, though. Once again, Chris is an amazing asset. You guys utilize him. Go book a call with him. That trust is going to save you money. If you can't afford, or if you, it's not because you can't afford financially, but maybe it's like there's your family, right? You can't move to Puerto Rico. Not everyone can do this. Like, use that, to your advantage and lock in those gains without paying the freaking 3-letter agencies. It's very important that we do this the right way, and we have a plan. And so, guys, on that note, go out and crush the world. Make sure you bring value to your fellow man, your fellow woman, right? That way you can freaking bring money back into crypto and 100x your life, guys. That's the way to grow your bag in the bear. Although it's not really the bear anymore. This is great, man. I can't believe it. Woo! It's been a long one, and I'm glad I'm in DCA with all you guys. You guys are amazing. It's you guys, the community, that I love and make this show. Thank you so much. We'll see you mañana.